Session 6. Loving.
The responsibility of the husband.
Hi, honey. Made the reservations for 7. What time will you be home? But we had plans. Oh. Well, no, I would... No, it's all right. It's just that well, you know, we hadn't had a night out in a while, and I know. Sure, it's okay. Okay. Bye.
Bad news?
Something came up. For the 4th time this month.
Have you asked Bob about it?
Yeah, he says it's nothing. He's just had a lot of work lately.
But
I don't know. I'm starting to think he doesn't want to be with me, Mother. Something wrong with me? Am I getting too old? Too dull?
don't be silly.
And what's wrong? You know, he used to send me flowers for no reason at all. If I was upset, he'd leave little love notes around the house. He noticed everything. New hairstyle, new dress. Now he comes home night after night. He sits down, he watches TV, doesn't even notice I'm there.
Well, if it's any consolation, we've all been through bumpy times. What's wrong, dear?
It's different this time, Mother. Is he looking for a younger woman? Is he gonna run off with a 20-year-old, buy a fancy car? Is he? I don't know if I'm enough for him anymore. I'm sorry that I made to unload on you like this.
That's okay, sweetheart. Deb, I know my son. I know he loves you.
Does he? Then why don't I feel loved?
How on earth does it happen anyway? I mean, the person we fall in love with so much that we're literally head over heels and we can't get our eyes off the person and we can't write them enough poems and buy them enough candies and be with them enough that the whole world is irrelevant, that we walk in the park. We just can't get enough of them. We shower all the love humanly possible on this one person, and because of all the showering of the love, the woman of our life says, "Oh, yes, I want to marry you." Why? Because we're the one who loved her the most. If you ever counsel young people who are engaged to get married, and you ask them the question, what are you going to do when you fall out of love? You may get a book thrown at you. I mean, no couple ever believes the day will come when they'll have a problem loving each other. But they will. And there isn't a couple that's ever lived and been married that did not think or say or scream, "You don't love me anymore." Maybe that's why when you study the New Testament to try and find out what is the key responsibility of the wife and of the husband, God is very clear. He knows everything about us because He's made us this way. And when He describes the role of the wife, He says, I want you to be the helper to the husband. And when He describes the role of the husband, He says, I want you to be the head so she can help you. You lead and she'll follow. And then when God says, I want you to understand how to live in this role and maximize it and be happiest in it. If you're going to be the helper, that's your role. Your key responsibility is to submit. You can't be a helper if you don't submit. You submit and you give honor and you give respect. Regardless if your husband needs it, you do it anyway. Even if he doesn't deserve it. You can't help if you don't submit. When He comes to the husband and says, you are the leader, how does He want us to play that role or fulfill that role? Does He want us to be autocratic, domineering, abusive? As the wife is to be helper who submits as unto the Lord, God says, the way I want you to be the head is a particular way. The way I want you to be leader is the leader who loves as Christ loved the church and gave Himself for it. Christ died for the church because He loved it so much. Therefore, as a leader, you are to love your wife completely. Now, what on earth takes place so that love starts to be a problem? Because at the beginning, our wife whispers sweet nothings in our ear and tells us how wonderful.
Oh, baby.
And then eventually something takes place, breakdowns occur. Instead of sweet nothings in our ear, there is sour naggings in our ear. And we look up and we want to take her out and paint the town. And the only problem is the only thing we paint is the bedroom walls. And we start bringing her flowers and candy. And then reality hits. And there we are, just trying to keep the weeds out of our own flower beds. Well, what is the secret about love anyway? I love this comment right here. Love is the one business in which it pays to be absolutely lavish. To give it away, throw it away, splash it over, empty your pocket, shake the baskets, and tomorrow you'll have more than ever. Isn't it true? If you love yourself and never give it to your spouse, you'll have less love for your spouse than you had today. The more you give it away, the more you obey the commandment of God regarding your spouse, the more love you'll have tomorrow to give away. Interesting, love cures people. It cures both the one who gives it and the one who receives it. David May said, one of the great illusions of our time is that love is self-sustaining, that once you fall in love, you'll stay in love. It's not. Love must be fed and nurtured and constantly renewed. And love in the heart wasn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. What kind of love are we talking about anyway? What kind of love? Because when you're in love the first time, you're half in love of being in love. And the feeling you have. It's selfish love, mostly. What kind of love really are we looking for? Biblically? Victor Hugo said the supreme happiness of life is the conviction of being loved for yourself, or more correctly, being loved in spite of yourself. What does the Bible teach about this issue of love? I want you to turn to the key passage. It's the book of Ephesians chapter 5. What does God teach in this unbelievably packed passage about insights about how to actually go about loving your wife? Ephesians chapter 5, verse number 25 says, husbands, love your wives as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. There it is. Love your wives. When you look at the language behind that English, it is in the Greek language, and the Greek word love is agapo. to love, or agape as we call it sometimes. It is the same Greek word when it says, God so loved the world. It was that kind of love. Or Jesus Christ loved. It is that kind of love. Or when I'm commanded to love God with all of my heart, all of my soul, all of my might, it's the same Greek word. It means that kind of love. All of it. Love. All of it. But then it's an imperative. It's a command. Husband, love, I mean it, love your wife. Therefore, it's something I can choose to do or not to do. It is a choice that's up to me. I can obey a commandment of God and choose to love my wife, or I can choose not to love my wife. That's the surprising part of it. Who would have ever expected that I have to be commanded by God to love my wife? Because if I don't, I won't love my wife. That love doesn't keep on by itself. It's got to be nurtured. And therefore, if it's an imperative, it's a choice that I have. I can either choose to obey God and love my wife, or I can choose to disobey God and not love my wife. Now, you may say to yourself, wait a minute, I just don't feel like I love my wife anymore. But it's a command. Therefore, the truth of the matter is, you can if you want to. But I don't have any feelings left. Well, get them back. It's interesting. I remember counseling a man once who hated somebody else in his family. I mean, with a passionate hate. And it was 20 years old. And it was vicious, fresh, right to that moment. And I said to the man, this hate is 20 years old for what they did. How on earth can you still have that so fresh in your heart? And he says, I keep it there every day. Oh, see, love and hate is the same. Can you hate someone and then decide, I'm going to stop the hate? Yes, you can. You're commanded to love your enemies, not hate them. So if you can take one emotion, one action, one desire for pain, hate, and end it, and turn it right around, then love your enemies. Can you and I not obey the command that says to love my wife? Yes. Is love an emotion? Of course it is. Is love an action? Love acts. There's a common teaching right now that love is not an emotion. Are you kidding? You tell that to any couple that's ever get married. Love isn't an emotion, it's what you do. No, love has actions that flow from it, but love is an emotion. And when Jesus Christ, when the Apostle Paul, when Peter says, love your wife, he doesn't just mean do things that show you love. It means love her emotionally, passionately, with feeling, with fervency, with the wonder of it all. That's what it means. You mean, yeah, but I'm not in control of that. Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you are. It's interesting that once you make up your mind, in counseling couples who hated each other and didn't want any part, even to talk with each other, and the repentance takes place, and the decision takes place, I will obey God, and we will put this marriage together again, and by God's grace, I am going to love you again, and vice versa, I am going to love you again. You can see the people in 2 days, and they can be absolutely giddy with each other. Is not that true? How many times have you in your marriage been without love, been empty, been aching, been wanting love, and some crisis takes place, and you look to your spouse, you break in tears, and you hug and you make up, and it's all there again. Don't you dare believe that you're not in control of your emotions. It's just your heart's hard, and it's disobedient. Therefore, break it up. It's interesting that God says, when he's talking to some of the people in the book of Revelation about being obedient to him, you know what he says? Go back and do the first works. That's the secret. How do you love your wife? You make a choice to obey God, and then you take responsibility to go all the way back to the first works. What was I like when I was head over heels in love with my wife? Oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Okay, then do this and this and this and this. And I promise you, you will be head over heels with your wife again. Call her up on the phone and tell her how much you love her. Surprise her with some flowers. Take her out for dinner. Wake her up in the middle of the night and tell her how much you are in love with her. Take her on walks. Bring her home a rose. Have eyes only for her. Yes, of course. Not only is it an imperative, but it's active. It's not passive. It doesn't mean, watch this, it doesn't mean you wait until the feeling of love comes. That's a lie. It would be an imperative that's passive. You wait till you feel loving, then go love. No. It's not middle that somebody else does it to you. I got to go to a counselor, go read a romantic novel. No, it means you decide, I am going to actively love my woman. And she doesn't have a chance. And you know what? Your wife doesn't have a chance. Men, there's not a woman alive who can handle. His wife's even nodding before I finish the sentence. All across this auditorium, wives are going, preach it, man, preach it. How many of you are saying, you know, that's the truth? Yeah. I've yet to watch a woman who can't, they'll just blossom underneath their man's love. And so many times when women leave the loving a marriage because they sin, and you counsel them over here in the middle of an affair or when they want, you pull up all the dirty garbage that caused it, and at the end of that rope, I'm not loved anymore. Is there anybody who loved me? It's active. You mean you make a choice? Yes. And you get after it? Yes. How do you do that? You go all the way back to the things that caught her the first time. I fish. And I went fishing for the first time years ago in Colorado in these brooks with the trout. And the trout are very smart in that part of Colorado. They can suck in the little fly and spit it out before you can even sense it. And I was out with a guide and with my son, and we fished. He said, wrong one. He took it off and took another little. He said, try this one. Let it go about 6 inches beneath the top. No, wrong one, give me it. He picked up some stuff out of looked in. He said, wrong color. Gave us a different one. And we caught the fish. Time after time after time. He says, you got to have the right bait to catch the fish. Guess what? You are the bait for the woman you love. You are the bait. Get dressed up, man. Go for it. And what it was that caught her the first time, she hasn't lost the love of those things. And everybody's different. Go back to those things that just made her head, who is that? That's what you want to do. It works, doesn't it? Not only is it an imperative, not only is it an active, love your wife, it is in the present tense. It's not the tense in Greek that means love her once. No. It's not the tense in Greek that means love her for a little while here, then not for a while, and then in the ebb and flow of life, then love her again, then let it go for a little while, and love it again. And it's not. It's very careful. It's in the present tense. You know what that means? You love her, and don't you stop. Don't stop. Don't stop being active in choosing to love your wife. You know, a wife who is loved by her husband will follow her husband anywhere. Isn't that true? Yes, I asked my mother, Mom, how did you go with Dad when he didn't have a job and we went across the country and you had 6 little kids and you hardly had any money? And she started laughing and she said, because we were in love then like we are now. And let's go. Yes. That's why the role is to lead and the responsibility is to love. It's to love. What does that word love mean? It means literally to pick this person over everybody else, to hold them up and to admire them, to lavish affection and warmth and caring and nurture and cherishing. to celebrate them. I remember going back to college many years later, and I was in the lobby. I hadn't been there for a long time. And there was a couple standing there that we knew real close as friends, and I was there with them. And the Dean of Women came in. She's a stately, very stately and refined woman. And she came up and she said to the wife that was there of my friend, I was there by myself, and she said to the wife, she looked at her and smiled, and looked at the young man and said, "You're a very good husband." It's been 10 years since she saw him and her. And the young man beamed and said, "Why do you say that?" And she started walking away, very refined, and looked over her shoulder and said, "Young man, your wife is radiant." And walked away. Yes. Love your wife. Love her in 3 ways. Number 1, verse 25, husbands, love your wives. Number 1, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. My model to love my wife is the same way that Christ loved the church, in every way, at all times, doing what the church needed, so much so that Jesus Christ died for the church. Therefore, when I think about it, it's an all-giving love. It's a sacrificial love. It's a love that stays and sustains when everything around is shambling and falling apart. There's no Christian virtue in being attracted to certain people over others, even if it's poor people over rich. Christ didn't call us merely to modify our tastes. He called people to love, and that's why we are commanded to love. It's achieved through effort. That the church wasn't always loving in return to Christ's actions of love to them. That sometimes men, our wives, are anything but loving in return. But it's the unconditional love. Paul Tournier says, I am convinced that 9 out of 10 persons seeing a psychiatrist do not need one. They need somebody who will love them with God's love, and they will get well. So that's the kind of love. Sacrificial love. The second one is in verse 28. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Verse 29. For no one ever hated his own flesh. That's a remarkable thing. Many secular psychologists are saying the biggest problem with you is you hate yourself. That's a lie. There isn't a person ever been born who hates himself, even at this moment. No one hates. They have too much self-love. Too much self-love. And God says to love your wife as yourself. Why? Because you are one flesh. And this concept that says, I tear down my wife, I don't give honor and love and affection and caring, and I don't listen to her, and I don't nurture her, and it's not going to make any difference to me, because I am me, and I'm over here. And how you're doing isn't related to me is absolutely the opposite of what's true. I have yet to find a man who's got everything in life who is happy if he's not in love with his wife. There's an emptiness in the eyes and a sadness that is so profound. The thought that says, I don't care about you, I will live my life over here, as if it will make no difference to me if we aren't in love, is a lie. You are her. She is you. And because you are one flesh, you got to love her, because you're shooting yourself in the foot and the arm, and you're stabbing yourself when you don't love her. And you will suffer because you're one flesh. Number 3, not only has Christ loved the church, not only as our own bodies, but number 33, nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself. As himself. Therefore, as you think to yourself, What do I love? What do I enjoy? What would I love to take place tonight? Then that's the very thing you do for your spouse. As Christ loved the church, as you love yourself, as yourself. What would I love to have happen in my life? Well, I'd love a surprise once in a while, or I'd love this, or I'd love that. Then that's what you do. A romantic's evening. You plan it. You set it up. You drive home, pick up your wife and say, sweetheart, come with me. Where are we going? Just you and me. Where are we going? I got dinner made. I know. Thanks. We'll have it tomorrow leftovers, but I got something just for you. You go to the favorite restaurant, lights are down, candlelight's up. You take a hold of her hand. Yeah, literally. The way you used to. Across the table. I took my daughter out to the restaurant Sunday. We had pancakes in the middle of the afternoon. And there was a couple that were engaged. In the next table, there was a young man, maybe 25, 26, and a young woman. They were engaged. You saw the diamond ring. And it got to be absolutely funny. They held hands across the table like this. Her hands were in the middle. His hands were like this, rubbing her hands. This is in the middle of a restaurant. And she's looking into his eyes. And she starts crying. This is exactly what happened. I don't know. She wasn't upset crying, but the tears were there because I was sitting here. I could see him, and my daughter could watch it. He stops, gets his little hanky out. He reaches across that table and goes like this. Oh, it was wonderful. My daughter is in love, not engaged. Says, oh, Dad, that's beautiful. Yes. When's the last time you grabbed your wife's hand and just... The way to love someone is to lightly run your finger over that person's soul until you find a crack, and then gently pour your love into that crack. Why? Because sometimes your spouse has all kinds of needs, doesn't she? And there's no greater love than the love that holds on where there seems nothing left to hold on to. Because that's what love's all about. True love doesn't have a happy ending. True love doesn't have an ending. So as we conclude this session about the responsibilities, I tell you, I'll take the responsibility that God's given to men. Love your wives any day. Can you imagine the thought of Almighty God saying to men, the greatest feelings you ever had in your life were loving your wife? Please do that some more. Please do that some more. Please don't stop. Please keep your heart on fire. Why? Because St. Augustine said, one loving heart sets another on fire. That's what love's all about. Therefore, husbands, as you are the leader, the master, the ruler, would you please lead with love? So much love. Take this one with you again. Love is the one business in which it pays to be absolutely lavish. I love this. To give it away to your wife, to throw it away to your wife, to splash it all over her, empty your pockets over her, shake the basket for her, and tomorrow do it all over again and again and again and again. For how long? Somebody else said it this way, until death do it part.
Hi.
Hi. Thought you had to work late.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Well, kids aren't here. Your mother insisted on taking them.
Yeah, no. I asked her to.
Really?
Yeah. Then I realized you had your heart set on going out to dinner.
Well, it is too late now.
Ah, au contraire.
What's this?
What's it look like? It's candlesticks. And what goes with candles? Sticks. Candles. It's a piece de résistance.
Sweet and sour pork.
Ah, your favorite?
Okay. What's the deal?
Well, I just figured the best way to spend the night would be to have dinner with the most beautiful woman in the entire world.
Bob. Let's eat.
It's like romance, huh?
Oh, this looks wonderful.